Welcome to teaching learning session of sociology. Today we'll start with new course, that is BSOE 132. We'll discuss about the history and development of Indian sociological traditions. And today we'll start with the major influences on Indian sociological traditions. Right. As we know that Auguste Comte is known as the father of sociology, and G.S. Bure is the father of Indian sociology. He is the one under his guidance. The sociology has started in India. Right. India has a history extended over nearly 4 millennia. Its cultural heritage consists of the religious and philosophical works and were composed in the classical languages like Sanskrit, Prakrit and Pali, right? In the Mendeleev period, that is the Bhakti literature, was composed in the regional languages such as Avdi, Braj, Maithili, Bengali, Assamese, Marathi, Kannada, Tamil, Telugu, and Malayalam. There are classical form of performing arts, architecture, and every other thing. The Indian philosophy actually consists of six schools of thoughts, namely the Yoga, Sankhya, Nyaya, Vaishika, Vedanta, and Mimamsa. This is an important source of Indian thoughts. The 13th principal Upanishads consist of philosophical inquiries into inner life and ultimate destiny of human beings. And the school of thoughts concern the evolution of mankind towards the certain ultimate period. The Indian social thoughts in pre-modern time was the articulation of multi-ethnic society, impact of Islamic tradition, which gave rise to the Sufi cult and had a wide range of influence on the lifestyle values, especially in North. See, in India, as we know that India is a there is a unity in diversity. India is composed of many. India is made up of many type of people, right? It consists many cults, many regions, and the religions. And Vedas and Upanishads plays a very important role, right? It guides us how to lead a life. Right, and from this, they are our guided. The Vedas and Upanishads are our guiding forces, and from these, the sociologists. From this, so how the society, these Upanishads and Vedas guide us how a society could form and how can you maintain a social order in the society. Right, the coming of British into India was an event which had a far-reaching consequences on the Indian society. Right, before Britishers, the Upanishads and the Vedas were the guiding forces to the societies. But after the when the British comes into India, there was a consequences which the British era had a far-reaching consequences for Indian society. The age-old traditions began to decline due to new social and the economic forces. The classical languages like Sanskrit and Persian declined, and English became the official language. Right. The British brought an important change in India by introduction of the railways, posts, and telegraphs, which facilitated the communication between the groups. Administration and the judicial services were extended to many parts of the subcontinents. Before that, there were no railways, right? No post. We get the railways and the post because of the Britishers, and they introduced that administration and the judicial services. Then, because of this, India entered into the modern stage. The school, colleges, and universities were started by the British ruler. The formal schools, colleges, and universities were started by the British rulers, although there were school, colleges, and universities even before the British rulers, but the formal schoolings and the college and the universities were started by the British rulers. Feudal classes such as Rajas and Zamindars and Talukdars were no longer in the center of stage. The middle classes which emerged during British period are now prominent in nearly all spheres of the social life in Indian society. Now there is a change in Indian society, right? Because of these British periods and because of their policies, right? The Rajas and the Jamindars and Talukadars were no longer the center stage. Before that, the Zamindars, Rajas, and Talukdars played a very important role in Indian society. But after the British, but when they came to the India, when the British came to the India, there was change in the Indian society, and the new class known as the middle class emerged during their period, right? During British period, right? And now this middle class is prominent in nearly all spheres of life in Indian society. See how society has changed, right? From zamindar, rajas, talukadars to modern middle class society. Castes are important in ritualistic and domestic spheres. Classes have become a significant occupational, professional, and public life. We know that caste is one of the hardcore truth of Indian society from very beginning, right? And caste are important in rituals and the domestic spheres. But classes now, because of emergence of a new class, that is because classes depends on the wealth, and caste is acquired status, while class is we discussed about the class is achieved status. And class has become a significant in occupation, professional, and in public life. The middle class is product of both economic and cultures. The number of middle class not only share a common economic life but socio-cultural life. So, that economics and culture played an important role in emergence of middle class, and a member of middle class not only share the economic life but they also share the socio-cultural life. Their socio-cultural life as well as their economic conditions were similar type of, right? In the 19th century and the early part of 20th century, it is the member from middle class who began to think in terms of reforming and modernizing the Indian society. That is why we are discussing the emergence of Indian sociology, right? So it is because of in 19th and 20th century, the middle class started thinking about the reforms and modernization of Indian society, and the reformist attempts contain both religious and social components. They started thinking about the reforms in the religion as well as in the social components of Indian society. One of the early 19th century reformers was Raja Ram Mohan Rai of Bengal. He believed that the India could become a progressive if they shed the superstitions and evil practices such as sati pratha and infanticides, right? So it is because of the emergence of the middle class, it is because of the efforts of the middle class started thinking that the Indian society needs reforms, and after reforms, only after the reforms, the India can progress. They started thinking about the modernization of the Indian society, and one of the best example of this is the Raja Ram Mohan Rai, right? It is because of his efforts we are able to abolish that sati pratha, right? That Raja Ram Mohan Rai founded a Brahmo Samaj, which was meant to be spiritual form where monotheistic, non-ideals worship could be conducted by its member who had nothing to do with the caste or superstitions. Ram Mohan Roy's influence was mainly confined to the urban literate groups of Bengal, right? So Raja Ram Mohan Rai founded the Brahmo Samaj. He opposed the worship of the idols, right? According to him, that spirituality is important, so one should be spiritual, but there is no use to worship the idols. The Raja Ram Mohan Rai's influence was mainly on the urban class Bengalis, right? In the same century, Mahadev Govind Ranade, a jurist of Maharashtra, founded a Prarthana Samaj in Bombay. This was broadly modeled on the Brahmo Samaj of Bengal. In Bengal, Raja Ram Mohan Rai was there. He founded the Brahmo Samaj in Maharashtra. In Bombay, Mahadev Govind Ranade formed Prarthana Samaj as per the on the basis of the model of the Brahmo Samaj. Socialist reaction raised by the two movements were quite different, but they started working in the different direction. The social reactions raised by the two movements were quite different. The Brahmo Samaj, by its insistence on the Western inspired liberalism, gave rise to this stormy orthodox reaction. Ram Mohan's reform were strongly opposed by the orthodox Hindus led by Radhakant Dave. By contrast, liberal trends initiated by the Prarthana Samaj did not create a direct conflict between the tradition and modernity. So, in Brahmo Samaj, the orthodox people opposed the Brahmo Samaj modernity or the thoughts. But liberal trends initiated by the Prarthana Samaj didn't create any conflicts between the traditions and the modernity. Right. So this is because of the efforts of the middle class, right? They start thinking about the modernization of Indian society, right? And the revivist moments, the Arya Samaj, launched by the Dayanand Saraswati, was based on the appeal to people to shed unhealthy feature of Hinduism and go back to the pristine purity of Vedas. Brahma Samaj was founded by Raja Ram Mohan Rai. Sabha was founded by Ranade, and another is Arya Samaj was launched by Dayanand Saraswati. That is Dayanand Saraswati was it with this the Arya Samaj was based on the appeal to the people to unshed the unhealthy feature of Hinduism. Right? What all are the unhealthy features of Hinduism is that the caste system, superstitions, and rituals, and go back to the pristine purity of Vedas. It sponsored a kind of education which had both tradition and modern component. Dayanand Saraswati emphasized on the education system, which consists of which should be an amalgamation of both modernity as well as tradition. The DAV or the Dayanand Anglo-Vedic College spread the education in North India on a wide scale. The Ramakrishna mission, founded by the Vivekanand, had a twofold purposes. Arya Samaj, Brahma Samaj, Prarthana Sabha, Arya Samaj, and now next is Ramakrishna mission, founded by the Vivekanand. Right? There were the two purposes of this Ramakrishna mission, founded by the Vivekanand. The first is to make the educated people to make educated people in India to realize their responsibility to the weaker section and take steps to remove poverty and social backwardness. And second is to propagate Indian Vedanta to Westerns. So the two purpose of this Ramakrishna mission was to make the educated people to realize about their responsibilities towards the weaker section of the society, and they should take these steps to remove the poverty and the social backwardness from the society. And second was to propagate the Indian values and the Vedantas to the Western countries. Right. And on the same time there were the political movement for the freedom in India. These all were the reasons for change in the Indian society, right? That is, on one side people have started questioning about the orthodox rituals and orthodox people about their orthodox thinking. They started questioning about the orthodox thinking, and they formed the various types of the groups or the missions for the betterment of the society. On the other hand, the political movements were going on for the freedom in India. Towards the end of the 19th, all this is happening in the 19th and the 20th century. Towards in the end of the 19th century, a political movement for the attainment of independence arose in India. The National Congress, founded in 1885 by Octavius Hume, established a political forum for debates and discussion. In 1800, and you see, Brahmo Samaj was formed by Raja Ram Mohan Rai. Pratna Sabha was there, right? And then Dayanand Saraswati formed that. That is Dayanand Saraswati form, that is Arya Samaj, and Ramakrishan Mission established by the Vivekanand. All these organization or the institutions were working for the betterment of the Indian society. Apart from this, Indian Congress has been founded in 1885, and this political forum was formed for the debates and discussions. Most members of National Congress were drawn from the urban literate group. It's essentially middle class character persisted from 1885 to 1917. The distinctive mark of Indian struggle for independence was a non-violent approach. We all know about the non-violent approach, that we achieved this freedom because of this approach. While the religious movements indirectly contributed to the political movement through education and reform, the National Congress and the other political parties directly participated in the political activities. See, the Indian National Congress and other political parties, where they directly participated in the political activities, they started discussing and debating about the situation, while the religious movement like Brahmo Samaj, like Arya Samaj and all other, the religious movement indirectly contributed to the political movement through education and reform. Through these religious movement, what this religious movement have started, they tried to reform the society, and they tried to educate the people. The former type of the movement, that is the religious movement, induced the self-confidence, while the later type created a political consciousness. Both played an important role, whether it's a religious movement, whether it's a political movement. The religious movement induced this self-confidence, right? And that political movement created a political consciousness. And both played important role, right? Intellectual antecedents of sociological thoughts in India. India had a classical literature tradition which lasted for centuries. The hallmark of elitism was knowledge of Sanskrit. Sanskrit is our primary language, right? And that during the Bhakti phase, that is approximately from the 9th century AD, there was a development of high quality of literature in regional language. We know about the Bhakti phase. That is the Tulsidas wrote Ramcharitramanas. There was Kabir, and during the Bhakti phase there was Surdas, right? During the Bhakti phase there was a development of the high quality of literature. We know the contribution of Kabir Das, Tulsidas, Surdas, and many others, right? So there was a development of high quality of literature, that's too in the regional language, and it played a very important role, because before that everything was in the Sanskrit language, and all were not able to understand that Sanskrit language. When during Bhakti Kal period, that the intellectuals started writing the things in the regional language. The Bhaktas who inspired literally activities in regional language were either writers themselves, or else their teaching inspired the works. Then, as I mentioned, that Tulsidas, Surdas, Kabir, and then Sankradeva, Chaitanya, Namdev and Tukaram, Narsi Mehta, and Puran Dardas, and Alvars, and many others were there. Right, during that Bhakti Kal period, they wrote a good literature in their regional languages, and the prestige was attached to the Sanskrit language. There was a swift but a partial changeover to English among the Indian elites, and the Indian intellectuals of 20th century were caught in dilemma between the tradition and modernity. Before that, Sanskrit, before the British era period, Sanskrit the language of was an elite language, right? It was a language of elites. But after that, when British invaded the India, then English became the languages of elite, and swift but the partial changeover to the English from Sanskrit among the Indian elites, right? And those Indian intellectuals of the 20th century were caught in dilemma between the tradition and modernity. Right? The tradition stood for the old customs, values, ideals, etc., while modernity implied the impact of Western rational ideas, equality, etc. Right? Kumaraswamy, a famous social thinker, meant by tradition the basic premises or the core value which were common to both East and West. Then there were social thinkers like Kumar Swami, right? According to them, they prefer that tradition, the basic premises or the core value, right? They prefer those core value which are both the East and West. And Binoy Kumar Sarkar, an eminent sociologist, took other extreme of setting aside the tradition in India, which were rooted in the religion and spirituality. So there were types of people, socialists like Kumaraswamy. They preferred tradition over modernity, while Binoy Kumar Sarkar is an eminent sociologist, and they set aside the tradition. He set aside the traditions of India. He tried to show a secular strength of India, yet he did not altogether reject the tradition. He wanted to extract the secular component of Indian culture and use it for the human progress. Right? See, although he rejected, although he was not very much in favor of the traditions of Indian, which was actually rooted in the religion and the spirituality. He did not altogether rejected the tradition, but he tried to find out those secular components of the Indian culture, and he wanted to use that secular component for the betterment of society or for human progress. Right? Binoy Kumar Sarkar. Binoy Kumar Sarkar was a rationalist, right? Rationalist means think logically, who questions each and everything. He was a rationalist. He did not agree with the view that the West was materialistic while East was spiritualistic. We divided it into in that ways that we always considered that East is spiritualistic while West was materialistic. He did not agree to this concept. Sarkar argued that the Indian society had materialistic as well as secular components. So according to him, although there is a spiritualistic component, India or the East was spiritualistic, but Indian society had materialistic as well as secular components. India's past could be described in terms of positive and materialistic terms. He did not subscribe to the view that India was mystically or otherworldly. Sarkar welcomed the transition of India from feudal agrarian past to the capitalist present. So Sarkar was of the opinion that capitalistic structure or the capitalistic society is good. So he welcomed the transition of India from feudal to agrarian to capitalistic society. Right. So according to him, that India was not mystical, and he appraised that capitalistic system. In his search of in his search for the rationalistic basis of India, Sarkar resembled Max Weber, who developed sociology of capitalism. So he was in favor of capitalism, and Sarkar also developed a sociology. Sarkar was of view of was Sarkar resembles to Max Weber. Right? Sarkar focused on the political aspect of capitalism, while Karl Marx discussed its economic aspect, and the Weber focused on the bureaucracy. So the only difference is, see, Max Weber has given the concept of the bureaucracy, and Max Weber favored the capitalism, and similarly, Sarkar was also in favor of capitalism, right? He was of the same view of the Weber, but the only difference was the Sarkar focused on the political aspect of the capitalism, while Karl Marx focused on the economic aspect of capitalism, and Max Weber focused on the bureaucracy aspect of capitalism. In order to march along the developed society of the world, India needs self-confidence. And Sarkar was atheist, but he did not discard the India's religious traditions. According to him, even India's religion had a secular basis. Although Sarkar was atheist, but he never discarded the India's religious tradition. Right? According to him, that in India's religion had a secular basis. Right? Individualism gained prominence in the industrial society of Europe. The individuals needed to be aggressive and motivated for action and achievement. The old collective identities were therefore buried, and new individual goals and aspirations began to thrive. Sarkar was inspired by the two political philosophers of Europe, that is Niccolo Machiavelli and Thomas Hobbes. Right. With the development, or with the industrialization in the Western countries, the individual become important rather than the society. So individualism gained the prominence in the industrial society of Europe. Right. And Sarkar was inspired by the two political philosophers of Europe, that is Machiavelli and the Hobbes. Machiavelli wrote his political philosophy in early days of emerging modern capitalism. The capitalist individual was aggressive, self-confident, and more interested in material gains. His prescription for political ruler was that they should seize hold the opportunities and act ruthlessly to achieve the goals. Thomas Hobbes was later political philosopher. He proposes the theory of social contract. The self-seeking individual depicted by Niccolo Machiavelli were no longer suitable for more advanced capitalistic society, which required order and balance. Individuals give up their selfish needs, enter into social contract, and abide by the norms. So according to Machiavelli, right, that he wrote about the political philosophy in the early emerging days of capitalism, right? So according to Machiavelli, the capitalist individual was aggressive, self-confident, and is more interested in the materialistic gains. Right, and while Hobbes was a later political philosopher, and he proposed the theory of social contract. Right, according to this, individual must give up their selfish needs and selfish wishes and enter into the social contract, and should abide by the norms. This way, the individual aggression would be kept under reasonable control. It is very important that individual should be aggressive, but that aggression should be kept under the control, and that when the individual give up their selfish needs or wishes and that individual should enter into the social contract and should abide by the norms. That is the only way that the aggression would be kept under reasonable control. Sarkar stated that Indians should firstly give up their mystical attitude, and secondly, they should develop a social perspective suitable to the capitalistic order. So, Sarkar was influenced by Machiavelli and Hobbes. So, Sarkar stated that the Indians should first give up their mystical attitude. And then, second is they should develop a social perspective that which should be suitable to the capitalistic order. Right? So, important works by B.K. Sarkars are Positive Background of Human Sociology, published in 4 volumes, Political Institutions and Theories of Hindus, and he taught economics at the Calcutta University. Right? Then Ananda Kumaraswamy. So Sarkar taught economics at Calcutta University, and he was in favor of capitalism, and he was influenced by Machiavelli and Hobbes, and according to him that B.K. Sarkar published the Positive Backgrounds of Hindu Sociology, right? And then the Political Institutions and Theories of Hindus, right? Now, Ananda Kumaraswamy, we discussed about the Kumaraswamy. Ananda Kumaraswamy was an early Indian social thinker whose work had been the development of the sociology in India. This is how the sociology in India has emerged. Right, these are the few thinkers. Because of their efforts, we are able to study the sociology, and because sociology in India has been emerged. Kumaraswamy was an early Indian social thinker. He was an idealist, that is a person believing in abstract value of life like God, values of goodness, etc. Right? In this, he stood in contrast to the B.K. Sarkar. Very clear, because he was an idealist. Idealist matlab a person who believes in abstract value of God, goodness, and other things, right? He was in contrast to B.K. Sarkar, who wished to explore the material basis of the Indian society. The first 2 or 3 decades of this century may be described as a period of Indian Renaissance. Personalities such as Vivekananda, Sri Aurobindo, Rabindranath Tagore were also trying to project an idealistic view of India. Right? In the essence of all these men held that the greatness of India lays in its spirituality. So whether it's Rabindranath Tagore, whether it's Kumaraswamy, whether it's Vivekananda, whether it's Aurobindo, right? All were of the view that they were trying to project project an idealistic view of India. Right? And according to them, that greatness of India lies in their spirituality. Ananda Kumaraswamy extensively explored the evolution of art in India, especially architecture and sculpture. So Kumaraswamy extensively explored about the art and culture, specifically the art of India, especially architecture and sculpture. Indian art in its merit form was not merely a decorative and an aesthetic object, but it was the key to understand the Indian mind, which recognizes the oneness of all in the universe or unity in diversity. So, as per Kumaraswamy, the art of India tried to show that Indians always recognized that there is unity in diversity, or they recognizes the art of India recognizes the oneness of all in the universe. In a country where many people are not literate, the Indian art served as a visual medium of instructions. It depicted epics, Puranas, and legends in stone, clays, or marble for instructions of folks. Ananda Kumaraswamy wrote many books interpreting the philosophy of Indian art. According to Kumaraswamy, the India where majority are not literate, where people are not literate, the Indian art tried to serve the visual medium of the instruction. Those who are not literate, they cannot read, then they, through the visualized medium of art, they can they can understand our culture and the Vedas, right? Our culture, our art depicts our Vedas, our Puranas, and and the instructions of fox, right? So Ananda Kumaraswamy wrote many books interpreting the philosophy of Indian art. Kumaraswamy held that the Indian images were not merely anthropomorphic form, that is, folk belief transformed human form, but also portable treasure house of Indian idol. The Shiva Nataraja was not only denoted a peak achievement in the sculpture, but also symbolized the liberation. Right? So he tried to interpret it, the Kumaraswamy tried to interpret it, the Indian art, right? Indian art, philosophy of Indian art, according to him, the Shiva Nataraja was not only denoted a peak of achievement, right, in sculpture, but it also symbolized the liberation. Shiva's dance ended the mortal limitations and freed the human soul from its temporal trapping. That's what it depicts, that Nataraja Murti, that the Shiva's dance ended the mortal limitation and freed the human soul from its temporary trappings. He noted that there were many parallels between the Indian art and European Gothic art. Kumaraswamy presented for the first time a comprehensive philosophy of Indian art. Ananda Kumaraswamy made a unique distinction between the tradition and modernity. So he distinguished between the tradition and modernity. He held that tradition was an epoch anchored in the values of collective life and qualitative achievement, right? And this was disrupted by the Industrial Revolution, whose influence became worldwide. The competitiveness of New Age made the human being materialistic and grasping. According to the Kumaraswamy, right, that the tradition, those the values, that the values of the collective life and the qualitative achievements were the epoch and anchored, right? They played an important role, and this industrial revolution have disturbed the whole society, and it has impact worldwide. It has influenced the whole world, and the competitiveness of the new age made a human being materialistic and grasping. He regretted that the modern times, the science and technology have been put to wrong uses. People become aggressive and selfish. The nations strive to dominate each other through violence and warfare. In comparing East and West, he did not try to uphold India's superiority over the rest in spirituality and human values. Although he compared India East and West, but he never tried to uphold India's superiority over the rest of the world in spirituality and the human values. Right? According to him, that industrialization impacted the whole world, and the development, human beings are using using the science and technology in a wrong direction. Right? He wrote extensively on the commonness of mysticism and Europe, Chinese and Arabic religious texts and the documents. So he tried to find out the commonness among the European, Chinese, and Arabic religious texts and documents. Right? In the final analysis, what mattered was activation of the core values which were common heritage for all mankind. So, according to the Kumaraswamy, that core values are very important. Right? Kumaraswamy wrote that the chosen people of the future can be no nation, no race, but an aristocracy of whole world in whom the vigor of European action will be united the serenity of Asiatic thoughts. In a similar vein, he wanted the nationalists in India who were then struggling for their independence and to nurture broad visions. He wanted the young Indians to aspire not only for the independent India but for better world free from tensions. So he was of the favor that the young Indians should start thinking about the independent, not only about the independent India, but for the better world free from the tension. Merely imitating the West in the name of West was not going to help the emerging Indian nation. So it was of the favor that we should not only imitate the Western countries on the name of modernization, right? It is very important that we should stay to our core values, and we should aspire for the young should aspire for the independent India, and not only for the independent India but also for the better world free from tensions, right? So this was Sakar and Kumar Swami. Both were opposite to each other. There are some other intellectual like Radha Kamal Mukherjee, G.S. Ghule. They both were that Radha Kamal Mukherjee as well as G.S. Ghule were noted sociologist of Lucknow and Bombay University. Radha Kamal Mukherjee was from the Lucknow University. He taught at Lucknow University, while G.S. Ghule at Bombay University. They were more directly influenced by India's Sanskritic heritage. They looked at the modernity as instrument of adopting tradition contemporary conditions. So according to them, they looked at the modernity as an instrument. That modernity is an instrument of adapting traditions to contemporary condition. How could you adapt the tradition to the contemporary conditions? In comparison to D.P. Mukherjee, another eminent sociology of Lucknow, started off as a Marxist. There was a Radha Kamal Mukherjee, G. Sule, and that is in comparison to them. In comparison to Radha Kamal Mukherjee and G.S. Ghule, there was a D.P. Mukherjee, right? He was from Lucknow. He started off as a Marxist, right? He viewed tradition and modernity as confronting each other and shaping each other, but he rejected the final Marxist solution of an utopian state. So, according to D.P. Mukherjee, he viewed that the tradition and modernity as confronting each other and shaping each other. According to him, that modernity and that tradition, they confront each other, but he also rejected the final Marxist solution of utopian state, right? Structure of modern education in India. In the three British presidencies, that is Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras, universities were established during the 19th century. There were three British presidencies. We all know that Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras, right? And universities were established during the 19th century in each presidency. In the princely state of India, such as Baroda, Mysore, Hyderabad, institutions were established for modern education, while higher institutions had English medium and lower schools had a vernacular, that is the regional language medium. The purpose of education was to train Indians in art and sciences so that they would help in smooth functioning of British rule in India. See, although there were, even before that British era, there were schools and colleges or the universities, but there was change in the structure of the education system in India during British era, right? The universities, like in the three British presidencies, the universities were established in the princely state, various institutions were established, while the higher education was in English medium, right? Had English medium, and lower schools were had vernacular or the regional language. Why Britishers started this education system? Why they what was the purpose of that education system? Because Britishers started this. The purpose of this education system was to train Indians, right? Train Indians in arts and science, so that they could help the British state for the smoothing, British government for the smooth functioning of British rule in India. The main objective was that the educated Indians were usually absorbed in the lower rungs of administration and judiciary, that is, at the clerical position. In the arts and science, a limited number of subjects were taught. These includes the English, history, philosophy, economics, physics, chemistry, botany, and zoology. Sociology came to be taught as a major subject only after the first 2 decades of 20th century. So there were limited number of subjects, right, which were taught, right, like English, zoology, botany, economic, and other things, philosophy, and rest. Right, the sociology came to be taught as a major subject only after the 2 decades of 20th century. Sociology developed as a discipline primarily due to the need felt by the British rulers during the colonial period to understand the customs, manners, and social institutions of Indian people. Why they started sociology as a subject, right? What was the reason behind it? The reason was that they developed the sociology as a discipline because they felt that it is required to understand the customs, the manner, and the social institution of the Indian people if in a better way, which could help them in governing. Thus, initially it was a British administrator, Herbert Risley, J.H. Hutton, Wilson, Alfred Lyle, and the Baines, who conducted the extensive studies of Indian peoples, their culture, and their races. We know about Risley, right? Hutton and Wilson. They conducted extensive study about about Indians, and about the Indian culture and the races. Sociology was introduced in 1914 in Bombay University as a subject for the first time, and then it was introduced in the Calcutta University at Calcutta University in 1917. Right, so it was in 1914 when sociology was introduced as a subject, first in Bombay University, then in 1917 Calcutta University. Emergence of sociology and social anthropology in India. Right, sociology as a discipline came much after the contribution made by the social thinkers and philosophers, administrators who worked at the understanding of the Indian society in general, as well as studying the some aspect of the Indian society as law, family, religion, caste, and everything. It is the contribution made by the Indiologists such as Henry Manet, Alfred Lely, etc., which helped the development of the sociology in India. They emphasized the need to preserve the indigenous social institutions found in Indian society rather than destroying them and imposing an alien way of life of her people. They recognize the past glory of Indian culture and literary tradition. Beside Indiologists, there were British administrators who made extensive study of Indian people, their races, and the culture. Most of the studies helped the regenerate a body of knowledge preserved in the census report, gadgets, district gazetteers, etc. Right. Sociology was better established on the continent, that is European countries like France, Germany, etc., than in England, and it took even the stronger root in American university, where it has retained a dominant position till now. Alongside of sociology, anthropology was also developed in Indian universities. We will discuss about the development of Indian or the emergence of sociology and social anthropology in India in our next lecture. Thank you very much. Namaskar.